6 years ago, my parents dropped 100 grand on my sister's fairy tale wedding in Switzerland. They promised me the same. Now that I'm getting married, they won't even buy me a dress, insisting I wear my sister's hand-me-down. They called me selfish, disrespectful, a brat, but they didn't know I was recording everything. 6 years ago, my life was irrevocably benchmarked by my older sister's wedding. It wasn't just a ceremony, it was a coronation. My parents, fueled by a potent combination of pride and what I can only describe as a competitive fervor, orchestrated an event of staggering extravagance. The final bill they footed hovered around the $100,000 mark, a figure they discussed with a casualness that always left me slightly breathless. And that was just their contribution. Her new in-laws, a family of considerable means themselves, also chipped in, pushing the total cost into a realm I couldn't even properly conceptualize. The chosen location was Switzerland, a picture postcard setting that held sentimental value for my sister and her now husband, being the site of their first romantic getaway. The guest list was less of a curated selection and more of a sweeping census. It felt like our entire high school graduating class was invited, along with every person she'd ever shared a lecture hall with in college. Family, friends of family, and even distant acquaintances whose names I barely recognized received embossed invitations. It was a lavish, sprawling affair, a testament to my father's booming success at the time. His pharmaceutical company was thriving, a veritable money-printing machine, and my mother, a respected doctor with a flourishing private practice, was in an equally comfortable financial position. They could afford it, and more importantly, they wanted to. They wanted the spectacle, the grandeur, the bragging rights. And they got it. I remember standing on a balcony overlooking a crystalline lake, surrounded by snow-capped peaks, feeling a strange mix of awe and unease. I asked them then, in a moment of youthful naivete, if my day would ever come. Would they do the same for me? Their answer was swift and unequivocal. "Of course, sweetheart," my mother had said, squeezing my shoulder. "Definitely," my father echoed, beaming. I held on to that promise, tucking it away like a precious keepsake. Now, 6 years later, I'm getting married, and I presented them with that promise, expecting them to honor it. My request was a whisper compared to the roar of my sister's celebration. I wasn't asking for a fraction of what they spent on her. There would be no destination wedding, no chartered flights, no guest list bloated with mere strangers. My fiancé and I envisioned something intimate, a gathering of the people who truly mattered in our lives. We found a beautiful hotel just outside the city, a place with stunning grounds that offered a touch of elegance without the exorbitant price tag of a Swiss chateau. It was well within their means, a drop in the ocean of their finances. Furthermore, we weren't asking them to carry the burden alone. My fiancé's parents, wonderful and generous people, had immediately offered to split the costs 50-50. My fiancé and I were prepared to cover any remaining expenses ourselves, ensuring that no one felt strained. But when I laid this all out for my parents a few days ago, their enthusiasm was conspicuously absent. Instead, I was met with a sudden and jarring stinginess. The one thing, the single element of my wedding that I truly coveted, was a custom-made wedding dress. It was my one non-negotiable, the one piece of the day I wanted to be unequivocally mine. This, apparently, was a bridge too far. They balked at the idea, insisting I should just wear my sister's gown. "It's perfectly beautiful," my mother reasoned, "and it would be such a waste for it to be worn only once." They started painting a picture of financial hardship, claiming they were already spending so much money on the wedding, which was a blatant falsehood. My father launched into a somber monologue about how his business had taken a significant hit during the pandemic and that he simply couldn't afford the kind of wedding he had provided for my sister. He told me I should be grateful for what they were offering instead of making such unreasonable demands. A hot, furious anger coiled in my stomach. I knew he was lying. His business was in the pharmaceutical industry, a sector that hadn't just survived the pandemic, it had boomed. Even if I were to entertain the remote possibility that he was telling the truth, his sudden financial consciousness was suspiciously convenient. For the past 4 years, I had watched them live more lavishly than ever, taking extravagant vacations, buying new cars, and renovating their house. Their spending habits hadn't been curtailed in the slightest, yet now, for my wedding, they were pleading poverty. The conversation quickly devolved into a heated argument. They called me entitled, spoiled, and ungrateful. The words were like stones, and I felt the familiar sting of being the other daughter, the one who was always expected to make do. "If you're so concerned about costs, I snapped, my voice shaking with rage. Then we can start by cutting you from the guest list. I stormed out of their house, the front door slamming shut behind me, a sound that felt both childish and deeply satisfying. Since that day, my phone has been a constant source of anxiety. They've called and texted, their messages a barrage of accusations. They called me immature, a brat, and told me that even my sister agreed I was in the wrong. The irony is, for my entire life, I have been the frugal one, the one who accepted less. Despite my parents' immense wealth, my childhood was a tapestry of my sister's hand-me-downs. Clothes, shoes, books, toys. I was the second-hand daughter. And I never complained. I loved my sister. I looked up to her, and I was happy to wear her clothes. But this is my wedding. This is the one time in my life I wanted to feel like the priority, not the afterthought. I wanted something that was just for me. My fiancé, bless his heart, is torn. He understands my hurt, but he also believes that it's their money and, ultimately, their decision to make. But they promised me. I keep saying, the words feeling thin and hollow. They made a promise, and now they're not only breaking it but also gaslighting me into believing I'm the unreasonable one for wanting them to keep their word. The clarity that came in the days following our fight was painful, but necessary. For years, I had subconsciously accepted the dynamic. My sister was the golden child, the one for whom no expense was too great, no request too demanding. I was the practical one, the easy one, the one who didn't make waves. My parents treated us the same in the broadest strokes of parenting, but when it came to resources, there was a clear and undeniable disparity. I never minded wearing her old sweaters. She had great taste, and in a way, it made me feel closer to her. It never occurred to me to question why a family with their resources would be so parsimonious with their younger daughter. But now, that history is being recontextualized through the lens of this current betrayal, and it hurts more than I could have imagined. I decided to stand my ground. It was no longer just about the money or the dress. It was about the principle. It was about the broken promise and the casual disregard for my feelings. If they could choose what to do with their money, then I could choose what to do with my wedding. And a wedding without the people who were causing me so much pain started to sound like a relief. I wouldn't take their money, and in return, I wouldn't have to endure their presence. My decision to disinvite them wasn't a rash, angry outburst. It was a calculated response to years of feeling secondary. They had given me so much grief for simply asking them to honor their word. In their minds, they were entitled to a place of honor at my wedding, regardless of how they treated me. I decided they weren't. For 9 days, I maintained a strict radio silence. I ignored their calls, letting them go to voicemail. I left their text messages unread. My sister tried to mediate, sending me a flurry of messages urging me to be the bigger person, but I ignored her too. She couldn't understand. She had never been in my position. She had always been the sun around which my parents' world revolved. For her, every request was met with a smile and an open checkbook. She couldn't comprehend the deep unfairness of it all, and trying to explain it to her felt like a futile expenditure of energy I didn't have. This was a battle between me and my parents, and her involvement would only complicate things. After a few days of silence, they changed tactics. They tried to go through my fiancé. They sent him a long, carefully worded text expressing their deep concern for me. They painted a picture of a loving family torn apart by my irrational behavior. They told him they wanted him to talk some sense into me to help me see that things were going too far. They wanted to be there for me on my wedding day, they claimed, because I was their daughter and I was important to them. It was a masterful performance of parental love, but the sentiment rang hollow. If I was so important, why did showing it feel like such an insurmountable task? All I had asked was for them to keep a promise. My fiancé, knowing the full depth of my hurt, was having none of it. He replied politely but firmly, stating that he would not get involved in a family matter and that if they wanted to resolve things, they needed to speak to me directly. His response was not what they were expecting. They replied with a tone of shocked indignation, suggesting that if he truly cared for me, he would side with them and guide me back to the right track. They literally told him he should be trying to get me to apologize to them. That was the moment my fiancé's patience evaporated. The audacity of them trying to parent me through him infuriated him. He sent back a curt message, stating that I was a grown woman capable of making my own decisions and that he had no intention of acting as a parent to his own fiancée. He then muted their conversation and they, likely stunned by his bluntness, didn't reply. When he told me about the exchange later that evening, I felt a fresh wave of anger. The fact that they would try to manipulate him, to turn him against me, was a new low. It solidified my resolve. I would pay for the wedding myself. I would dip into my savings, we would cut costs where we could, but I would not sacrifice my self-respect. I would rather have a smaller, simpler wedding that was authentically ours than a grander one tainted by their conditional generosity. A week went by in silence. I had begun replanning the wedding on a tighter budget, a task that felt both daunting and liberating. Then, one evening, my phone lit up with a long message from them. It was a masterpiece of self-pity and accusation. They were disappointed in how I had chosen to handle the situation. They lamented my refusal to speak with them, framing my silence as a childish refusal to bow to their whims and fancies. The language they used was dripping with condescension, painting them as the long-suffering victims of my entitled, vindictive nature. They ended the message by saying they believed there was still hope for reconciliation, even though I was acting very bratty. That was the final straw. The complete lack of introspection, the inability to even consider that they might be in the wrong, was staggering. I replied. I told them I was unwilling to speak to them unless they were prepared to entertain the possibility that they were not the blameless parties in this situation. If they couldn't do that, there was nothing to discuss. 2 hours later, my mother called. My dad was on speaker. She said she wanted to sort things out. She told me to say whatever was on my mind. So I did. I poured out weeks of frustration and a lifetime of feeling second best. I explained that it was never just about the money. It was about the promise, the favoritism, the dismissal of my feelings. I laid my heart bare, hoping for a sliver of understanding. I was wrong. As soon as I finished, it became clear that they hadn't heard a single word. My speech had been a mere formality, a box they could tick to say they had let me speak. They immediately launched into their own well-rehearsed narrative, victimizing themselves, repeating the lie about their financial situation, and then trying to blame me for not getting married earlier when they were in a better position. When I tried to interject, to remind them of their recent lavish spending, they became defensive and aggressive. It's our money, my father boomed. We can spend it how we want. And it's my wedding, I retorted. So, I can invite who I want. That stopped them for a second. Having no logical comeback, they resorted to personal attacks. And that's when I quietly started recording the call. They called me insolent, selfish, and disrespectful. They said they regretted even trying to make things right with me. My mother's voice turned venomous as she told me the only reason they were even trying was for appearances. They didn't want the shame of their daughter having a shabby wedding associated with their name. But now they didn't care. They told me they no longer wanted to consider me their daughter, and that if I didn't apologize, they would be officially disowning me. Feel free, I said, my voice cold and steady. I'm not interested in being the daughter of two of the most shallow people I've ever known. They unleashed a torrent of curses, but I had heard enough. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I took the recording, trimmed it to the most damning parts, and sent it to my sister. I included a long text, providing the full context, sparing no detail of the conversation. I told her, "These are the people you've been defending." I still held a sliver of hope for my sister. Our relationship, despite everything, had always been a source of comfort for me. Thankfully, she didn't disappoint. She was horrified. She replied almost immediately, saying she was going to speak to our parents and that this was not fair to me. She apologized for siding with them, admitting she had no idea how bad things had gotten. Later that night, she called me, her voice thick with emotion. She apologized profusely, telling me she had confronted our parents. She had tried to defend me, to make them see how hurtful their words were. Their reaction was to turn on her, telling her to stay out of it and getting nasty with her as well. The moment she stopped blindly agreeing with them, she too became a target. It was a revelation for her. She saw, for the first time, the truth of their manipulative nature. They hadn't just been favoring her, they had been using her as a tool to control me. She told me she was cutting off contact with them until they apologized to me. I told her she didn't have to, but she insisted. The conversation was a turning point. We cried, we talked, and we began to heal the rift that had grown between us. The past few weeks have been a blur of wedding planning and sisterly bonding. We met up several times, and the awkwardness quickly faded, replaced by the familiar comfort of our shared history. She apologized again, and I accepted without hesitation. The true surprise came when she offered to help pay for the wedding. She told me it was the least she could do to make up for her blindness to the situation. I refused, telling her it wasn't her responsibility, but she was adamant. "You deserve to have a beautiful day," she said, "and I want to be a part of making that happen." Her generosity has been a balm on my wounded heart. The wedding won't be the $100,000 spectacle my parents would have demanded, but it will be something far better. It will be a celebration paid for with love and sacrifice, not with money used as a weapon. My sister is helping me plan every detail, her excitement a mirror of my own. As for my parents, there is only silence. They lost both their daughters in their quest to control one. Even if they were to apologize now, it wouldn't change anything. The rose-colored glasses are off, and I see them for who they truly are. I'm no longer interested in fighting for a place in their lives. I'm building a new life, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not for how well I conform to their expectations. And I am happier than I have ever been.